truck, Boy Lincoln X-ray 985, should come back up next.
21.
Start me a card for a parking problem on the truck when you're ready.
Rocky, I'm 505. 21.
Start me a card for a parking problem.
Beyond the Call is a monthly program featuring public safety and educational topics with the Richmond Police Department. Beyond the Call is brought to you exclusively by Babcon Electric.
Hi, I'm Rick Babuka, Vice President of Babcon Electric. Babcon Electric is proud to support Beyond the Call. We have been an active community sponsor for over 20 years. And if you need electric repair, don't hesitate to call. Call Babcon Electric at 859-623-3848 and expect superior service. Service beyond the call. Enjoy the program.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Thursday. It is the 19th of September. My name is Sergeant Josh Hale. We are on our monthly program Beyond the Call with the Richmond Police Department. This program is sponsored by WBON TV and Babcon Electric. The mission behind this program is that we do this again every month, that we want to take an opportunity to get information out there for our community and give them things that an opportunity to listen to that they may not have or they may not think that they had ever talked about. So we just wanted to bring this program to you and introduce these new ideas to you. I've got a very, very special guest today. My special guest today is Congressman Andy Barr. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Sergeant Hale, good to be with you.
We are happy to have you here. We were just talking about off the air some of the topics that we're going to discuss today, and we're just going to dive right into it on what we're going to talk about and how we came about this. So I guess, Congressman, I did a little research, as I said, before I interview all my guests on here. I was looking on your website, and we talked about me Googling your name and different things. Some of the things on your website that you talk about and some of the things that you've been involved with since you've been in office: national security, opioid epidemic, financial services, economy and jobs, energy, healthcare, fiscal responsibility, veterans. I mean, lots of different things that you've tackled since you've been in office. So with that in mind, I guess we'll dive into that where, kind of you can guide us where you want to go. But what made you decide to run for an office? And tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Well, I was born and raised in Central Kentucky. I'm a sixth generation Lexingtonian, and I care deeply about this community, having been raised here. And in fact, all four of my grandparents were born in Central Kentucky. So deep roots here in Central Kentucky. I grew up just north of here in Lexington, of course, graduated from Henry Clay High School, went to the University of Kentucky Law School, was practicing law and just wanted to make a difference. And there really isn't any other reason to run for public office than to want to make a difference. I'd never run for any other office. I'd not held office at the local or state level, but I really felt like the issues at the national level were an opportunity to make a real difference. And I ran and ended up now in my third term here representing the 6th Congressional District, which is the 19 counties of central and eastern Kentucky.
So you have a lot of places that you obviously have to visit. So we appreciate you taking time to come and talk to us today. So that's a pretty, pretty remote background just to kind of jump into the realm of national of a national office. So have you gotten much headway from that? Have you been able to get a lot done?
It's been a very productive couple of years, especially the last 2 years, where we've actually made progress in terms of getting results, delivering solutions. We are now experiencing a booming economy as a result of tax cuts and deregulation, unleashing America's energy potential. The work that we've done on the Financial Services Committee, passing legislation, finally getting legislation to the president's desk and now signed into law that is increasing Americans' access to the financial system. And when you think about it, financial independence, financial security is really the key to prosperity and upward mobility. And we're finally seeing an economy that's growing at over 4% gross domestic product, 4% growth. There are more job openings in America today than there are people who are unemployed. We're seeing wages grow, jobs being created. There have been 1.7 million jobs created since the passage of our historic tax cuts last December. And it's not just that there are more jobs being created and lower unemployment, it's that wages are growing. Over 4 million Americans have received bonuses and wage increases and increases in their benefits like 401ks. And the Department of Labor has recently just signaled the fastest wage growth, the fastest growth in salaries in America since before the recession. And that explains why consumer confidence is at the highest level in 2 decades. It explains why small business optimism is the highest in 45 years. And so the American people are better off now than they were 2 years ago as a result of our policies. And as a congressman for this area, it's very important that I get a chance to serve on the House Financial Services Committee, which has jurisdiction really at the epicenter of the economy. And that was one of our main goals when we were first elected, was to get the American people back to work. And it's really rewarding to see so many Kentuckians, people who live in central and eastern Kentucky, including Madison County, doing so well and prospering.
So can you elaborate on that just a little bit on how that could benefit this area by you being able to serve on that kind of board?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we look at, for example, the community banks and the credit unions that serve Madison County and their ability to extend credit to homeowners or provide a loan to a farmer, for example, or if there's an entrepreneur or a young person who has a really smart business idea, now our financial institutions are liberated to provide that credit to those people. So we're allowing more businesses and families, homeowners, entrepreneurs, farmers to achieve their potential, to achieve the American dream. And you're seeing that actually play out. On the tax cuts, we know, for example, a lot of anecdotes, a lot of feedback from people in Madison County, Richmond, and Berea area telling us how tax cuts have made life better for them. There was a small animal veterinarian, owns a small business. He wanted to expand his business. When he went to his accountant and learned about how these tax cuts were going to help his small business, he was able to go ahead and proceed with an expansion of his small business. There was a lady who worked at an auto manufacturing plant down in Berea who told me that as a result of tax cuts, she and her husband, who also worked a 2-income earning middle-class family, they were going to be able to buy a new home, a larger home, so that their 2 kids could no longer have to share a bedroom. They could have 2 separate bedrooms. I mean, it's a quality of life kind of thing. And that's really rewarding to see our policies that are now being put into place grow our economy and help people have a better, more economically prosperous life.
So basically, just the fact that people are working together and you're able to get these things done, it's helping the entire, not just Madison County, obviously, or just your district, but, the entire United States is changing because of some of the things that you've been able to work with.
Yeah, and as I said, it's a booming economy. One of my jobs on the Financial Services Committee is as the chairman of the Monetary Policy and Trade Subcommittee. That is the subcommittee with jurisdiction over the Federal Reserve System. And in that capacity, I get a chance to meet with the top economists in the country. I meet routinely with the chairman of the Federal Reserve System, Chairman Jay Powell. Before him, it was Janet Yellen, and other top Fed officials. And it's pretty impressive to hear what they say, that this is the best economy in a generation as a result of the fiscal policy changes that we've put in place.
Well, that's fantastic, and I know that, and everybody appreciates your hard work. So I was thinking you were talking about passing, some of the laws and different things. What are the steps necessary for, many people may not know this, what are the steps necessary for a law to actually pass or for things to go through in Congress? Because I know that a lot of people ask that question, or you hear the comments, there's nothing being done, but I don't think people realize what steps it takes to go through something. So can you explain that to everybody?
Sure, and I would say in my 3 terms of Congress, this has been the most productive of those 3 terms that I've served, where we're actually seeing bills pass and become law, signed into law. And it starts, the way I approach my job, it starts with listening. It starts with understanding your district, traveling to all of the places in the district, holding town hall meetings, listening to constituents in coffees with your congressman, having meetings with constituents. And the best ideas come from our constituents. And so a good example is the opioid epidemic. If there is a problem with our economy right now, it's labor supply. The factories, the manufacturers, the farmers of Madison County, they all tell me the same thing. that they are creating jobs. There are jobs available, but they can't find people to fill those jobs, particularly people who can pass a drug test. And so we know we have an epidemic, a drug epidemic in this community. Listening to those employers, those HR managers, those plant managers, has informed me that this is a really big workforce development challenge. Listening to moms and dads and brothers and sisters and husbands and wives about the tragedy of losing a loved one who has succumbed to addiction. That is something that we hear all too often. 116 Americans die of an opioid overdose every single day in this country. The CDC just came out with a report from last year, 2017, over 72,000 Americans died as a result of an opioid overdose. And in Kentucky, we suffer from the third highest opioid overdose mortality rate in the country. So we've got a particularly acute problem. And because of that, we started the 6th Congressional District Drug Abuse Task Force. We invited Eric Ellis, the brother of fallen Richmond police officer Daniel Ellis, to come speak to that group and talk about how the drug problem in Madison County is affecting real lives and real families. And that made a profound impact on me and my advocacy for to deal with the addiction problem. But we put together people from all walks of life, from the prevention and education world to the treatment world and to the not-for-profits, the faith-based organizations for recovery. And they gave us some great ideas. The first responders were involved, the hospitals, the ER doctors and nurses, they were involved, the paramedics. And they gave us some really good ideas. And the result was we went to Washington, rolled up our sleeves, we shared these ideas, and we went through the legislative process. And we proposed, for example, the University of Kentucky proposed to us in that task force that we need better best practices for dealing with neonatal abstinence syndrome, moms and babies who are suffering from addiction dependency. We introduced an amendment to the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act. That amendment passed. It commissioned a federal study, a nationwide federal study, to look at what other hospitals and obstetricians and neonatal units were doing for NAS. And we had a report that was produced that said, these are the groups that are doing the best job, getting the best results. And now that report is published and it's available all across the country for hospitals to implement best practices to deal with NAS. We also, as a result of the recommendations, we authorized $4 billion in new funding. Wow. And we appropriated $4 billion in new funding this year to address the addiction crisis. That's law enforcement resources, that's resources for first responders, Narcan and the like, but also recovery services, treatment services, more resources for SAMHSA, the federal agency that will provide funding. And to date, $21 million to Kentucky that's going to organizations to help with treatment, to help with recovery services. And there's more as well. But that's an example of how good ideas become law when citizens care enough to come to their representative, give us good ideas. We then roll up our sleeves. We take those ideas, we lobby for them, we work to get them included in comprehensive addiction recovery legislation, whether it's the Comprehensive Addiction Recovery Act, the 21st Century Cures Act, or the appropriations bill, all of which was in response to President Trump's declaration of a national public health emergency. Congress is responding, and we are making a difference.
So with that in mind and some very interesting information I didn't know, I'm going to talk to you off the air and get a little bit more too. But we're going to take a break right now. And then now that you've gotten that little bit of information, we're going to give a chance for our sponsors to represent us for our program here. And we will be right back. This is Beyond the Call. My name is Sergeant Josh Hale, and my special guest today is Congressman Andy Barr. We'll be back.
Hi, I'm Rick Babuka of Babcon Electric. Your home safety is our #1 priority. Call Babcon today and ask about our 149 Home Safety Special. A fully licensed and insured Babcon technician will replace all smoke detector batteries, tighten all electrical panel connections, test all GFI outlets, analyze electrical hotspots, and more. The Babcon Electric 149 Home Safety Special. One call will make your home safer. Call Babcon today.
Beyond the Call is brought to you exclusively by Babcon Electric.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Sergeant Josh Hale. We are on our second segment of Beyond the Call here at the WBON TV studios. We're brought to you by Babcon Electric, WBON, and the Richmond Police Department. My special guest today is Congressman Andy Barr. Welcome back, sir.
Good to be back, Sergeant.
We were talking off air, and then right before this on the segment, we were talking about the opioid crisis and some of the things that you have been doing to combat, the major epidemic and the crisis that we are in. Obviously, the president has declared this a national, emergency for health. So, I guess we're going to dive right into some of the ways that you want to, or that you're working towards combating this and bringing our communities closer together. Because as we were talking earlier, it's not just a one-sided problem. It's more of there's multiple angles that you have to attack on this, and we have to go at it. It's affecting our communities from the youngest children that lose parents and loved ones, all the way to the elderly that are also affected. So affecting our economy, all kinds of different ways. So how can our communities be more aware of some of these challenges that we're facing? Of course, everybody's touched by it, but how can they be more aware at the local, state, and national levels to help fight this violent war and this crisis?
Well, we want everybody to know that that we are fighting. We need to keep these poisons out of our community, and it is a comprehensive problem. It requires a comprehensive solution. There's not one solution to the problem. Education and prevention is part of it, of course. Law enforcement is a big part of it, and Sergeant Hale, thanks to you and all of the law enforcement that works on this problem. I know it's very taxing from a resource standpoint, and we were just talking off the air about the difficult things that you have to encounter, the dangerous places you have to go because of drug addiction, and not just the dangers, but just the tragedy that you have to deal with, the human tragedy that you have to deal with, these overdoses, and having to administer Narcan to bring people back from the death, basically. We need to give law enforcement every resource that they deserve to address this epidemic. And so on that front, I've been very active in promoting and supporting the HIDA program. This is the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Program. A few years ago, I worked with Senator McConnell to help secure a designation for Madison County as a HIDA county. And what that means is that we provide local law enforcement, like the Richmond Police Department, with federal law enforcement resources, allow you to partner with federal law enforcement to keep these poisons out of our community, to help find the big drug dealers and source some of the heroin and opioids that come into our community, to really keep them out and to punish the perpetrators who really are the criminals. And in this Congress, we try to kind of add to that effort by introducing an amendment to increase the total funding for HIDA, because we know other communities in our congressional district and around the country, they want HIDA designation just like Madison County. But we knew that just helping a county, say Montgomery County or Powell County or Clark County, all of which have pending applications, if we just support their applications but we don't provide more funding, that could cannibalize the funding that Madison County gets. So I introduced an amendment to the appropriations bill to increase the overall funding, so that when I went to bat for these other counties to get them designated as HIDA counties, it would not negatively impact Madison County. And in fact, it would make resources even more available to Madison County. So we were able to pass that amendment. We got bipartisan support for that amendment. I worked in particular with my colleague from West Virginia over in Huntington, because Evan Jenkins is his name, because they have a really serious problem over there as well. We passed that amendment, $26 million more dollars to the federal HIDA program, and it passed the Senate as well, and it's now law. And so we brought the total amount of funding on an annual basis nationwide to $280 million. That's $26 million more than it was before. It's still probably not enough, but we have a better chance now to bring the HIDA program more federal law enforcement resources to other high-intensity drug trafficking area programs along interstates like I-75 here in Berea and Richmond. And so we think that's progress.
So just to give our listeners and our viewers a little bit of information, HIDA, of course, that's not something that's specific to one law enforcement agency. That's not just the Richmond Police Department. It's not the state police, but it is multiple agencies that partner together to combat the drug dealers that come in and set up shop here in our towns and in our communities. We've got federal, local, state law enforcement agencies that all come together to form essentially a team to go after the big fish. For lack of a better term, although they do deal with some small level narcotics dealers or whatever, these are the guys that put out the big cases that charge people federally.
Exactly. And the U.S. Attorney, we talked to both Kerry Harvey, the previous U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Kentucky, and also currently Mr. Duncan. They're very supportive of this program, and it does bring some of these cases into the United States District Court, into federal court for prosecution. There is a deterrent effect associated with this, and I would just compliment law enforcement here in Madison County because it's not easy to get a HIDA designation. The way that Madison County was able to achieve the designation was not just because the congressman went to bat. I need a very competitive application. And the way that Madison County was designated was that the Richmond Police Department, the Berea Police Department, the Madison County Sheriff's Office, the Kentucky State Police all came together in cooperation and were willing to work with federal law enforcement agencies. And that made it a very competitive application. Obviously, the problem here is acute, and so we need it. But kudos to local law enforcement here for being willing to work in such a collaborative way with other agencies.
Yeah, and they are a lot of times for us even. I'm a guy that works patrol, and I do a lot of the media stuff or whatever. So people see me. They see me out and they see these patrol officers out in uniform. The HIDA guys and these drug narcotics guys, a lot of times these are the guys behind the scenes. You never see them. A lot of times they are undercover. They sacrifice their families. They sacrifice the things that, time to basically exist on drug dealer hours, and that's not a normal schedule at all. So, if I can give a plug and kind of a kudos to our guys, like you said, these are the guys that you don't see. So if you ever do know one of these guys, make sure you say thank you to them and give them an opportunity to maybe tell you a story every now and then, because they've got some very unique viewpoints on police work. So obviously we're appreciative of everything that you've done to keep HIDA flowing here so we can combat that problem.
Right. And if I could, Sergeant, also, as I said, it's a comprehensive problem. It requires a comprehensive solution. We've also focused beyond law enforcement. Once an individual who is not a big fish, as you say, but just someone who's struggling with addiction and has actually been preyed upon by some of these drug dealers. And by the way, some of the people who we've seen struggle with addiction, they could be high school athletes that get addicted to a narcotic, a pain medication, very legitimately because of an orthopedic surgery or something like that, and then end up, because of the powerful addiction, end up on heroin. For people like that who maybe they do go through the judicial system, maybe they do pass through a temporary period of incarceration, maybe they've come out of an emergency room with an overdose. But at that point, what do we do? Typically, some of these people who have struggled with heroin or opioid addiction, they're penniless. They have no resources. They've severed their ties with their family and their friends, and they really have no place to go. And what we've come to learn is that after they get out of jail, get out of the emergency room, go through a temporary period of even treatment, they have no resources, no job, no financial literacy, and no place to go. And they end up going right back to the very environment, couch surfing with other people who are in active addiction, and it's not a recipe for long-term recovery. So what I did was I introduced a couple of bills that focused on providing federal resources for transitional housing with job training, financial literacy, employment services, and structure in sober living, so that after someone comes out of incarceration or a temporary period of treatment, they can have long-term transitional housing for addiction recovery. We want that because we don't want them to have another interaction with law enforcement down the road or another interaction with the judicial system or the emergency room. And we want these folks to get back on their feet and into a job into housing, non-subsidized permanent housing, and sober living in the long run.
Well, obviously we don't want to have that recidivism with people. We want to get people the help that they need. And again, obviously law enforcement is just one side of it. So the fact that you're actually tackling, the economy side of it to help people, obviously means a lot to me as a family man, as a person who works in this community. And I think our listeners and everybody else appreciates it. So thank you for all that hard work.
And for your listeners, I want to say these are not just good ideas. We are actually getting results. That bill on transitional housing has passed the House. It has now passed the Senate. We're going to conference. That's going to become law, federal law. We are delivering solutions. We are delivering results. It's not just that we're trying. We're actually solving some of these problems. And look, it's not going to be solved overnight. We're going to have a drug problem for the long run, but we are getting results.
Well, with that in mind, we've got to take a break for just a moment here, and we're going to get our sponsors a chance to do a commercial here, and then we will be back with you. This is Beyond the Call. My name is Sergeant Josh Hale. My special guest is Congressman Andy Barr, and we will be right back.
If college is not in your future, let Babcon Electric show you the way to an energizing profession. Consider a career in the electrical construction industry. Babcon transforms high school grads into state-licensed electricians in just 4 years. A financially rewarding, highly technical, professional career awaits you. Call Babcon today to be considered for the next paid apprenticeship class. Babcon Electric. Make your next call the right one. Serving Central Kentucky for over 25 years.
Beyond the Call is brought to you exclusively by Babcon Electric.
Hi, welcome back for our third segment of Beyond the Call. My name is Sergeant Josh Hale. This is our Beyond the Call radio program that we do monthly. My special guest today is Congressman Andy Barr. Welcome back, sir.
Great to be with you, Sergeant.
So as we were talking before, as we had the plethora of information that we just never can have enough time to cover, obviously we were covering the opioid crisis and HIDA and some of the things that you've been able to work with other lawmakers to get done in Washington and also at the local level. But pick up where you left off. What else do you have that you're working on right now?
Well, I really appreciate the good working relationship that our office has with law enforcement, federal law enforcement, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Commonwealth's attorneys in our area. We depend on those constituents in law enforcement and in the judicial system to give us good feedback, good advice. For example, we've gotten a lot of good feedback on federal statutes that need to be reauthorized, like the Violence Against Women Act, which I've supported over the years to provide more resources to combat domestic violence, for example. The Commonwealth's attorneys' offices in my district have been very helpful on that. We've helped provide grants to first responders. We've worked with all the local agencies on those applications. So if anybody's watching and is interested in applying for federal grants, such as the COPS grants, or if you're a fire department, for example, we were able to get a fire grant recently for the Montgomery County Fire Department, a new ladder truck. We got a new building, a fire department for the Nicholas County Fire Department. Any agency like that locally, we work with those agencies to help access federal resources. And I think because of that work that we've done, we were able to earn, once again, the endorsement of the Fraternal Order of Police. We've been endorsed by the firefighters unions as well. And we really we value that relationship because I think all of us, and certainly my constituents, are so appreciative of the sometimes very dangerous work that you all engage in, but keeping our communities safe and secure is very, very important. And we all appreciate the work and the service and the sacrifice that you all give day in and day out.
Thank you, sir. So I guess as you move forward, what is your plan? I know that there's a plan, of course, in motion about what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. What's some of the other things that you're working on right now?
Well, we're going to continue to work on growing the economy. We have more work to do. We want to make some of these tax cuts permanent. We want to broaden the tax cuts. We have more work to do to increase Americans' financial security on our committee. One of the pieces of jurisdiction that we have in my committee that I chair that a lot of people don't know about is there's a national security component. I have jurisdiction and oversight over the Department of Treasury and its implementation and enforcement of sanctions. So we're very involved at a high level on enforcement of North Korea sanctions, Iran sanctions, Russia sanctions, other adversaries that threaten our country. And I think we've made a difference there as well. We passed a bill in a big bipartisan vote, the Otto Warmbier North Korea Nuclear Sanctions Act. Nikki Haley, the ambassador to the United Nations from the United States, she told me on multiple occasions that our bill helped bring the Chinese and the Russians to the table at the UN Security Council to put that maximum pressure on Pyongyang. We've deprived Pyongyang of $1 billion in hard currency since those sanctions were put into place. I think that's one of the reasons why you've seen a cessation of the nuclear testing, the ballistic missile testing, one of the reasons why Kim Jong-un came to the negotiating table in Singapore, why we've seen our hostages returned, why you've seen the remains of over 50 U.S. service personnel who are missing in action come home to their families from the Korean War. But more work has to be done on that, of course. We know that China is cheating. We know that Russia is cheating. The UN panel of experts just released that report, and Ambassador Haley made a big deal about that earlier this week. So we need to continue the pressure there, but that's one of the areas of work that we want to continue to focus on. And then in terms of law enforcement, in addition to national security, we want to see the work of the House of Representatives pass the Senate so that we can protect law enforcement. The Thin Blue Line Act, for example, is a bill that I voted for. It was a bill that the family of Daniel Ellis requested that we get involved with. And this is important legislation. It basically says the bill would expand the list of statutory aggravating factors in death penalty determinations to include the killing or targeting of a law enforcement officer, firefighter, or other first responder. We passed that bill with my support out of the House. And by the way, a lot of these are bipartisan measures. There's a lot of criticism out there that I or other members of Congress are very partisan. The truth of the matter is, every single Democrat in the U.S. Congress voted for my bill on North Korea. Every one of them. You can't get more bipartisan than 415-2. And on the Thin Blue Line Act, sadly, we didn't get everybody to vote for that, but we did get a bipartisan support for the Thin Blue Line Act, which is a very important piece of legislation. And now we need the Senate to act to protect and defend our men and women in uniform, protecting our communities. Also, I voted for the Protect and Serve Act, which allows federal prosecution of any individual who knowingly assaults a law enforcement officer causing serious injury. This legislation also passed the House in May of this year. And again, I've been very proud to work with Eric Ellis, Officer Daniel Ellis' brother, on a lot of these initiatives, and we really appreciate it. Finally, what I'll say that is unfinished business that I want to keep working on that has a nexus to law enforcement is border security. It also has a nexus to the opioid epidemic. I have voted in this Congress twice for two important pieces of border security immigration reform bills. Yes, it's border security in terms of border infrastructure, a border wall along the southwest border of the United States. It's one of them was $25 billion in appropriations, advanced appropriations. The other one authorized over $30 billion for border infrastructure. But it's more than that. It's also those bills that I voted for also provide more boots on the ground, more money for more Customs and Border Protection agents, more funding for ICE agents, an increase in 12,500 ICE agents for this country, more funding for the National Guard to fulfill and discharge its responsibilities at the border. I've had many conversations with Kentucky's outstanding Adjutant General about the Kentucky National Guard pitching in on that important Homeland Security mission and helping with the construction of border infrastructure and also helping support our Customs and Border Protection agents fulfill their mission and stop the importation of drugs, stop human trafficking, and stop illegal immigration into our country. And finally, it's fixing our entry-exit visa program. A lot of illegal immigration in this country relates to overstays of visas. So our bill would implement a biometric entry-exit visa program so that we can track people who come in and out of the country so that we stop visa overstays. And, we have this problem at the border with children and families, and there's been a lot of politicization of that issue. And of course, nobody wants separation of families and separation of children. But what a lot of the American people don't really understand, and I think the media did a disservice in reporting on this, is that a lot of these children who come across our border illegally are accompanied by adults who are not their parents. An unsecure border is an invitation for human trafficking and kidnapping. And what we know is that many coyotes would bring children who are kidnapped children, not their own children, across the border because we had this policy of separation, and because there was a decades-old court settlement that you couldn't detain children, the previous administration simply released these adults into the homeland with these children who are not their children. And so an unsecure border is an invitation for human trafficking, kidnapping, and it's a terrible situation. That's why I've been supporting border security, because it's not just to stop illegal immigration, it's to stop human trafficking, and it's to stop the importation of illegal drugs. The Customs and Border Protection Agency reports to Congress that 80% of the heroin that is interdicted is interdicted along the southwest border of the United States. So when we talk about this opioid epidemic, the heroin epidemic, the fentanyl that's coming into our communities, it's not just about supporting HIDTA. It's not just about supporting the interior enforcement here and the drug enforcement here. It's also about securing our southern border so that we don't see these deadly poisons come into our country in the first place.
So a lot of the work that you have been doing for the past, I guess, so this is your third term, we're going on your third term, has all come from the national level, and it just comes down to the local level. So everything affects everything, so to speak.
It does. I mean, if you think about it, national security, homeland security, the domestic economy, and then local issues like our opioid epidemic and trying to help people with transitional housing for recovery. And even to grants. I mean, whether it's getting that Montgomery County Fire Department that new ladder truck, or we've got another fire truck that's coming to the Estill County Fire Department here soon that we were able to secure, or helping Powell County or Clark County or Montgomery County secure a HIDTA designation. This is kind of the basic role of my office, and we are fulfilling that to the best of our ability.
Well, we want to thank you for all your work. We want to thank you for everything that you've done so far, and also want to thank you for coming and taking time today. You get to sit in on the not so serious side of some of the things now, and hear about some of the events that we have going on, and kind of how we wrap this up. So this is our wrap up segment, and we're going to tell you about some of the upcoming events that we have. But before we do that, we want to let you know that the Richmond Police Department, you will see us on Facebook, you'll see us on Twitter. We're also on our local channel here on Channel 12. We want to thank WBON TV, because of course we're live right now talking to you. So you can share this, like this, everything that you want to do. You can also comment on this if you're wanting to see some kind of information for our future programs. We've got some very, very great guests that we've had. We're always looking for new things to put out there for information for you. So Facebook, Twitter is some of the ways you can follow. My information, I'll have them put it on the program also, but my email address is jhale@richmond.ky.us, and that's a way that you can get in touch with me if you need to. Email is probably the best way. That way I can contact you back. While we were talking about Facebook and Twitter, I think it's very, very important to understand that our Facebook page and our Twitter page is not monitored 24/7. So although you do send us information and we will get it and we do put things out there, we have a team of people that do that. So make sure that you don't utilize that if you have an emergency. As always, if you have an emergency, make sure you call 911. If you have a non-emergency number, we will also give you that. That is 859-624-4776. And that will actually put you in touch with all of the agencies here for emergency services here in Madison County. So any one of those things. But again, if you have an emergency, don't send us a message on Facebook or any other social media, because we won't be able to get to you in time with that. Make sure you call 911. Some of the other things that we have going on, October is a very, very busy month for us. We're going to invite you to come back to any of this stuff if you would like to, obviously.
Absolutely.
We have several things going on. First one I can think of right now off the top of my head is that October is Domestic Violence Month. It's a major, major month that we focus on domestic violence. It is also anti-bullying month, and I had the opportunity to work several years ago on getting the helping get the anti-bullying law passed in the state of Kentucky. So these are things that are going to be going on in October. So make sure you put purple out, or put the purple and yellow out for anti-bullying and for domestic violence, so that you can support those causes, so that we can put a stop to the things like that. October 18th, I just got informed not too long ago, we are going to be having a Hometown Heroes softball game that is actually going to be taking place at EKU baseball field. So it'll be, from what I understand, an Alumni Coliseum there. I am not sure on the cost, but it's going to be the Richmond Police Department playing the fire department. So if any of you all follow us and you follow any of our trash talking, that it will probably get ramped up here in the next couple of days. On October 18th, we have a domestic violence awareness event in March, so that's something you can check into. Of course, we are right here with EKU, Eastern Kentucky University, here in our town. The EKU Homecoming Parade is October 19th, and that's a Friday, so we've changed it up a little bit this year, so it's not going to be a Saturday, so make sure you can pay attention on traffic, that stuff. October 25th is the Halloween Hoedown, so everybody likes to trick-or-treat, and everybody comes downtown. Downtown will be a madhouse at that time, so if you've never experienced the Halloween Hoedown, bring your kids. There will be thousands of people here, and it is a good time. So October 26th, we have the Trunk or Treat event at Battlefield Park, and that's out in the county a little bit. So these are some things that you can look into. But probably the most important one for me, other than the domestic violence and the important serious ones, is that on the first Sunday in November, which is November 4th, we have Turkey Bowl, and that is our flag football game between the police and the fire department. That is a program that we do to sponsor God's Outreach, and it helps us with our Feed the Families thing that we do all through the holiday season. So if you get a chance, that'll be at Madison Central High School. Don't know the time just yet, but it'll be a chance to see all the police department and the fire department beat each other up playing what's supposed to be flag football. With that in mind, that is pretty much everything that we've got. I want to thank my special guest, Congressman Andy Barr, again for coming. We appreciate your time. We know that you're very, very busy and the things you have going on. So again, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Sergeant.
So this is our last segment for Beyond the Call. We will be with you again very, very soon. And my name is Sergeant Josh Hale. This program is brought to you by the Richmond Police Department, Babcon Electric, and as always, where we are sitting, WBON TV. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Beyond the Call is a monthly program featuring public safety and educational topics with the Richmond Police Department. Beyond the Call is brought to you exclusively by Babcon Electric.